Sir, I passed every exam, every trial. What else do you need?
I need someone who fits the mold, Captain.
And you don't.
Orders haven't changed. No one's taking off.
Then I'll fly alone. They can court-martial me later.
Go 77 to Liberty Dawn. Hostile contacts locked. Engaging now.
Greetings from the United States of America. Imagine a young pilot, full of hope and dreams, who was denied the chance to fly fighter jets simply because of outdated rules and prejudice. Captain Ariana Mitchell was once grounded, not by lack of skill, but by a system that didn't believe she belonged. But when the unthinkable happened, a threat to a massive naval carrier, she took matters into her own hands. With courage and determination, she stole an advanced F-22 Raptor and faced 4 enemy jets alone in a battle that would change her life in the military forever. In this story, you'll witness Ariana's journey from rejection to redemption, from isolation to leadership. From the lonely hangars of Falcon Ridge to the fiery skies over the Pacific, and the tense courtrooms where her fate hung in the balance, this is a tale of bravery, sacrifice, and the fight for what's right. Now, before we dive into this incredible story, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? What city and country are you tuning in from? Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share it with friends and family who love stories of courage and inspiration. Together, let's spread the word and inspire others. Let's begin the journey of Captain Ariana Mitchell, her fight, her flight, her legacy. The pre-dawn stillness at Falcon Ridge Air Command was broken only by the distant hum of wind turbines and the faint crackle of radio chatter behind secured hangar walls. The Nevada desert yawned under a sky fading from inky blue to dusky violet, and inside one of the older dormitory blocks, Captain Ariana Mitchell was already awake, though she hadn't really slept. Her digital alarm hadn't gone off yet, but years of institutional disappointment had trained her to rise before anything else could demand her time. She sat upright in her narrow bunk, the kind with a government-issue gray wool blanket folded with clinical precision, and ran a hand through her thick, jet-black curls before swinging her legs over the edge. At 35, Ariana had long given up expecting change from above. She'd been decorated for her calm under fire during transport missions over combat zones in the Middle East. She'd flown through dust storms with 170,000 pounds of humanitarian cargo and made landings on airstrips that were more rubble than runway. And yet here she was, still a cargo pilot, because someone at the top had once labeled her too emotional for combat. That label had followed her like an invisible leash, tugging her back every time she pushed toward her dream, the cockpit of a fighter jet. Today was just another routine morning, or so she told herself as she zipped up her gray flight suit with its faded Mitchell patch stitched over the heart. Outside, dawn began to draw long golden streaks across the desert floor, and the heat already pressed against the hangars like a restless animal. Ariana passed rows of lockers and bulletin boards cluttered with mandatory posters on chain-of-command discipline and diversity initiatives that rang hollow after a decade of red tape obstacles. As she approached the briefing building, she spotted Lieutenant Morgan Reyes leaning against the metal railing, coffee in hand, her blonde ponytail poking through the back of her cap. Morgan smirked the moment she saw Ariana. Another day of hauling steel and pretending we're not the most overqualified truck drivers in the sky, she said. Ariana chuckled, but the fatigue in her eyes betrayed how deeply the irony cut. Falcon Ridge wasn't just any base, it was once a proving ground for elite tactical squadrons. Now it was mostly a logistics hub, and Ariana had long learned that in military parlance, logistics meant limbo. Her superiors weren't unkind, but they were careful. Colonel Grant Ellison, the commanding officer of the 317th Transport Wing, had always spoken to her with fatherly concern. But concern didn't sign off on fighter training requests. Ariana had passed Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the program years ago, top 5% in her class, only to be quietly reassigned before Phase 3 even began. No explanation. Just reassignment. She could still hear the frustration in Commander Javier Monroe's voice the day she'd been pulled from his roster. "You're the best stick I've seen in a decade," he had said. "But I don't run Washington." The memory stung even now, as she pushed open the briefing room doors and walked past rows of chairs filled with transport pilots half asleep with their coffee. She sat beside Morgan, who leaned in and whispered, "Think they'll finally let us fly something that can shoot back?" Ariana gave her a look, half amusement, half exhaustion. "Only if it carries boxes." They shared a chuckle, but neither was really laughing. Above the clatter of chairs and coughs, Colonel Ellison took his place at the front of the room. His silver hair was neatly parted, his expression graver than usual. The projector flickered on behind him, illuminating a tactical map of the North Pacific. Ariana narrowed her eyes. That wasn't routine. That was theater level. And for the first time in years, she felt it, not hope, exactly, but the prickle of instinct that told her something was about to shift. Maybe not today. Maybe not the way she wanted. But the air had changed. Something was coming. She could feel it in her bones. And that sensation, part gut instinct, part survival reflex, only sharpened as Colonel Grant Ellison cleared his throat and the projector clicked into place with a blue flash across the darkened room. "Pilots, listen up," he began, his voice deeper than usual, laced with something that tugged every groggy head upright. "We've got movement in the North Pacific. For unidentified fast movers. Intercept path aligned with Task Group Liberty Dawn." A quiet murmur rolled through the room. Ariana's heart skipped. The USS Liberty Dawn wasn't just any ship, it was the Navy's newest supercarrier, a floating fortress with over 5,000 crew. A threat to that vessel meant something serious, and judging by Ellison's taut jaw and the tightness around his eyes, this wasn't a drill. He clicked again, shifting the screen to radar sweeps and heat signatures, sharp angles, non-standard flight profiles, multiple targets. All attempts at communication have failed. Naval air cover in the area is limited due to maintenance rotations. We are, essentially, naked out there. He paused to let that land, then continued, "The aggressor squadron scrambled 90 minutes ago. 3 Raptors down for mechanical. 1 left. The only pilot currently qualified?" Ellison looked down at his tablet. "Captain Shane Edwards. He's grounded. Family emergency, out of state." A silence fell over the room, heavy and suffocating. 1 Raptor. No pilot. Ariana didn't plan to raise her hand. It moved before her brain caught up. "Sir," she said, voice steady, "request permission to speak." Colonel Ellison's eyes locked onto hers, and she saw the conflict in them. Hope? Desperation. Regulations. "Go ahead, Mitchell." She stood. "Sir, I completed Phase 1 and 2 of Raptor training before reassignment. I'm up to date on systems through my recent test pilot modules. I've logged sim time, Raptor combat profiles, just last month." Gasps. A few muttered bullshit-s. And then silence. "I volunteer for the sortie." The words hung in the air like contraband. Seated 2 rows ahead, Captain Mason Riley, a pilot with more ego than fuel capacity, snorted. "You're joking. U-Haul crates. You're gonna dogfight?" Ariana didn't flinch. "I'm a pilot who was denied advancement due to policy, not performance. I scored top 5% in my class." Riley opened his mouth again, but Ellison cut him off with a single-hand gesture. "Enough." His voice was low now, almost reverent. "Captain Mitchell, what you're suggesting is irregular. At best." "Sir," she said, eyes locked on his, "this whole situation is irregular." Around her, tension built like pressure in a sealed cabin. Everyone knew the stakes. Everyone knew the rules. And for the first time in her career, Ariana had put herself outside both. From the back of the room, Commander Javier Monroe stood. The man was a living legend, a combat vet, a former Thunderbirds instructor, and one of the few who had always spoken to Ariana like her rank and wings mattered. "I've seen her fly," he said, voice like gravel. "She's got instincts you can't teach. Only question is, does she have the spine to go nose to nose with 4 bandits?" Ariana didn't hesitate. "I do, sir." Ellison looked at Monroe. Monroe looked back. And in that silent exchange, something ancient passed between warriors. Trust. Or something like it. "Captain Mitchell," Ellison said at last, "you are not authorized to fly the Raptor." Ariana's stomach dropped. "However," he added, looking pointedly at the rest of the room, "if a pilot were to take independent emergency action under combat initiative doctrine," he trailed off, the words hanging like a loaded weapon. "The Raptor in Hangar 3 is fueled. Weapons hot. Scheduled for scrap training. No one's watching it too closely right now." That was it. Permission in everything but name. The room didn't erupt. It imploded into whispers and sideways glances, as if history had just cracked open a door and no one wanted to admit they'd seen it. As the briefing adjourned, Morgan Reyes caught up to Ariana by the exit. "You're actually doing this," she whispered, eyes wide with both awe and fear. "Someone has to," Ariana replied. And no one else raised their damn hand. Outside, the Nevada wind cut sharp across the tarmac. And for the first time in years, Ariana Mitchell wasn't looking at a ceiling. She was aiming for open sky. But first, she had to walk through hell. The path from the briefing room to Hangar 3 was less than 500 yards, but with every step across the cracked tarmac, Ariana Mitchell felt the weight of the Air Force machine pressing down on her spine. The desert wind whipped at her flight suit, the scent of heat and jet fuel thick in the air, as if the base itself were holding its breath. Falcon Ridge was waking up around her, trucks moving cargo, tech crews preparing for routine ops, radio towers humming with encrypted chatter, but none of it mattered now. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't approved. This was one woman moving under her own orders, through a system that had denied her for years, about to step into a jet she wasn't authorized to touch. Hangar 3 loomed ahead, half-lit under its curved metal roof. Inside, the F-22 Raptor sat like a sleeping predator, sleek, silver-gray, wings wide like a bird of prey about to strike. The most advanced air superiority fighter in the world, designed to kill before the enemy even knew it was there. And today, it was hers. If she had the nerve to take it. She found Sergeant Rulfo Espinoza already there, inspecting the starboard intake. A 23-year veteran of air maintenance, Espinoza had seen everything, from cockpit fires over Baghdad to software ghosts and unmanned drones, but he still looked up with a raised eyebrow when Ariana entered. "Captain Mitchell," he said, not looking away from the panel. "Bit early for transport flights, isn't it?" "Special circumstances," she replied. Her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding like a war drum. She walked up beside the jet and ran her fingers along the cold composite skin, feeling the smooth texture beneath her gloves. "How is she looking?" Espinoza finally stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "She's perfect. Fueled, armed, teeth sharpened and ready to bite. Question is, what kind of dance are we doing today?" Ariana met his eyes. "The kind that could get us both court-martialed." The sergeant held her gaze for a beat, then slowly nodded. "Ma'am, I've kept jets alive in places that don't exist on maps. I know a mission face when I see one." He stepped aside, giving her full access to the aircraft. "Just bring her back. That bird's got fangs, but she won't fly herself home." Ariana climbed the ladder, her boots clanking against the metal rungs. The cockpit canopy hissed as it unlocked, revealing the control seat like the throne of a mythic warrior. As she settled in, the familiar click of harness and HUD startup greeted her like a long-lost language. The avionics system blinked alive, illuminating her visor with streams of data, altitude, weapon status, radar range. Muscle memory took over. Her hands moved across the switches like they'd never left. And maybe, in her soul, they never had. Outside, Espinosa cleared the final safety checks. Ariana's voice crackled through the comms. "Tower, this is Ghost 77 requesting emergency sortie clearance under Combat Initiative Protocol." A long pause. Then a new voice, stern, older. "Major Frank Olson. Captain Mitchell, return to hangar immediately. You are not cleared for this mission. This is a direct order." Her fingers hovered over the throttle. This was it. The line. Once crossed, there'd be no walking it back. But in her mind she saw it clearly, the radar contacts approaching the Liberty Dawn, the empty flight schedule, the lives hanging in the balance. She pressed the comms button. "Sorry, Major. Radio must be acting up. I'm already rolling." Her left hand slid the throttle forward, and the engines roared awake, twin infernos spinning into life. The Raptor surged onto the runway, power vibrating through her bones, the sky rushing toward her like it had been waiting all this time. And just like that, Ariana Mitchell stole the most lethal fighter in the world. The moment her wheels left the tarmac, Falcon Ridge shrank behind her like a forgotten past. The desert below blurred into golden sand and fading brush, and above her, the open sky opened like a promise whispered across decades of denial. The F-22 Raptor responded to her touch like it had been waiting for her all along, smooth, obedient, deadly. She climbed past 20,000 feet in seconds, her body pressed into the seat by sheer G-force. The HUD shimmered green across her visor, and every digit, radar blip, and target box seemed to greet her like old friends. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. Because now, she wasn't just proving something. She was protecting something. Somewhere over the Pacific, for hostile aircraft were heading straight toward the USS Liberty Dawn, and nobody else was coming to stop them. Ariana leveled out at 35,000 feet and punched into supercruise, the Raptor pushing past Mach 1.5 without afterburners, slicing the air like a blade of thunder. The sun was just rising over the Pacific horizon, casting silver streaks across the water far below. Her mission data synced automatically from the tactical feed, 4 bogies, 68 miles out, no transponder, no communication, closing fast. They were flying tight, military, fast, and deliberate. And by every rule of engagement in the book, they were hostile. Ariana switched to emergency channel frequency. "Unknown aircraft approaching United States Naval Forces," she said, calm and clear. "This is Captain Ariana Mitchell of the United States Air Force. You are entering restricted airspace. Change course immediately or you will be engaged." No response. She tried again, this time in Spanish. Then Russian. Silence. At 54 miles, her radar warning receiver lit up with a shrill tone. One of the bogies had locked onto her. A direct fire control radar signal, no mistaking it. They were coming. And they weren't bluffing. "Ford Control, this is Ghost 77, she called into the comms. "Bogies have me painted. I'm declaring them hostile under ROE. Engaging now." From the Navy's side came a voice taut with tension. "Ghost 77, this is Liberty Dawn Air Control. Weapons free. Godspeed, ma'am." Ariana armed her AAM-120s and scanned for the best opening shot. The first bogie flew high and fast, likely the command craft. That would be her first mark. She locked tone, waited for the firing envelope to reach optimum, and let it fly. The missile detached with a mechanical clunk, then disappeared into the distance on a white-hot trail of death. Seconds later, a fireball bloomed on the horizon. Splash 1. Her breath caught, but she didn't have time to celebrate. 3 left. The remaining hostiles reacted like professionals. They scattered into formation, 1 high, 1 low, 1 wide, executing a multi-vector attack designed to pin and crush her. 3 kill zones. 1 defender. Ariana rolled into a dive, pulling 6 GS as she evaded the first missile fired her way. She dumped chaff, flares, and screamed downward, breaking radar lock. Another alarm. Second missile incoming. She reversed into a vertical climb, pushing the Raptor into its limit envelope, and it held. Just barely. The missile exploded harmlessly behind her, but warning lights lit up across her left console. Wing damage. Minor. Still flying. She broke hard left, lined up the second bogey, and launched a second AMRAAM. The hostile tried to break contact, but he was too slow. Another explosion, brighter this time. Splash 2. Her chest heaved, lungs screaming inside the pressure suit. The final 2 aircraft were smarter, faster, and still coordinating. They tried to bracket her, weaving in and out of radar coverage. One launched a close-range missile that Ariana only evaded by pulling into a desperate barrel roll, pulling so many GS that her vision started to gray. But she recovered, just enough. She launched her third and fourth missiles in rapid succession, targeting both simultaneously. Her instincts, training, and pure desperation lined them up like they were painted in neon. Both weapons struck within seconds. Twin detonations lit the Pacific sky. 4 hostiles down. All alone. Not a scratch on the fleet. Ariana exhaled, slow and shaking. "Liberty Dawn, this is Ghost 77, she said, voice almost cracking. All bandits splashed. Airspace clear." The response was immediate and stunned. "Copy, 7-7. Outstanding. Status?" She looked at her console. Warning lights blinked red. Fuel low. Hydraulics fluctuating. Her left engine temp rising fast. "Battle damage sustained," she replied. "Still flying. Requesting nearest landing field." Her hands gripped the stick tighter. She might have just made history, but she still had to survive the flight home. The warning indicators on Ariana's console pulsed like a countdown she couldn't stop. Her hydraulic pressure had dropped below safe levels, her left engine temperature was in the red zone, and her fuel gauge was already blinking empty. The Raptor had carried her through fire and death and miracles, but it was dying underneath her, and fast. She checked her map overlay. The nearest viable landing point was Stonehaven Naval Field, roughly 200 miles inland. At her current consumption rate, it was a coin toss. She throttled back to conserve fuel and dropped altitude, skimming just above the waves, low enough to avoid radar, but also to reduce burn. The ocean stretched out beneath her like a glassy abyss, indifferent to her fate. The cockpit was hot now. Her pressure suit's cooling system was struggling to compensate for the damaged internal systems, and sweat was beginning to form under her helmet. She wiped her brow with a gloved hand, eyes locked on the horizon. Each mile felt like an eternity. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the creeping edge of exhaustion and doubt. No one had cleared her to fly. No one had told her what to do after. She was just a stolen blip on someone's radar, unwelcome, unknown, unclaimed. "Stonehaven Tower, this is Ghost 77, she transmitted through the emergency channel. "I'm declaring an emergency. Single engine operation. Battle damage. Fuel critical. Request straight-in approach. Any runway. The reply came back almost immediately, voice tight with urgency. Copy, Ghost 77. Emergency vehicles are on standby. You are cleared for direct landing. We are not equipped for F-22 operations, but we'll do everything we can. Ariana gave a sharp nod to no one. That's all she needed. Permission to fall out of the sky with purpose. As the coastline came into view, patchworks of farmland, glints of asphalt runways, and the faint glimmer of radar dishes, her left engine finally coughed once, then again, and went silent. Dead. She was now flying a $70 million fighter on one engine and a prayer. Hold together, girl, she whispered. Just a few more minutes. The remaining engine whined in protest as she dropped to 500 feet. Fields and roads zipped beneath her. The Raptor was no longer a predator. It was a wounded hawk limping home. She aligned with runway 2 at Stonehaven and lowered her gear, no response. She flipped the emergency manual override. The landing gear groaned into position, but without hydraulic pressure, the lock confirmation never came. She would have to trust her instincts. Again. Tower, I'm on final. Gear extended. Hydraulics failing. No flaps. Coming in fast. The response was short, we've got you on scope. Winds calm. Bring her down. Ariana gritted her teeth and held her glide. The runway rose toward her like salvation. She touched down hard, too hard. The Raptor bounced, then slammed again, tires shrieking against concrete. She deployed the drag chute and reversed what little thrust remained. Alarms screamed. Metal vibrated. But the aircraft slowed, slower, until it stopped. Just 700 feet from the end of the runway. Ariana sat motionless for a beat, staring forward at the shimmering heat waves above the asphalt. Then, slowly, her breath left her lungs. She had made it. Barely. Emergency trucks surrounded her within seconds. One firefighter signaled for her to shut down the engine. She powered down the systems, one switch at a time, until the cockpit fell quiet, eerily, painfully quiet. The canopy hissed open. Sunlight poured in. Ariana pulled off her helmet, her face slick with sweat, and stood on the Raptor's wing. Waiting below was a short, sharp-eyed Navy officer in full operations gear. Captain Ariana Mitchell, I presume, the woman said. I'm Commander Sarah Bradford, Stonehaven Operations. She extended a hand. Ariana looked at it, then back at the burning sky. Yeah. That's me. She took the hand, and with it, stepped into a future no one had prepared her for. Less than 2 hours later, that future arrived in the form of a classified debriefing that felt more like an ambush. Inside a sterile conference room buried deep within Stonehaven's operations center, walls bare, vents humming, fluorescent lights casting a washed-out haze, Captain Ariana Mitchell sat across from 4 uniformed officers and 1 civilian analyst. The nameplate in front of the man at the center read, Admiral Russell Whitaker. Tall, stoic, African-American, with a reputation forged in every ocean the Navy had sailed since the Cold War, Whitaker was known for balancing brutal honesty with unflinching loyalty to those who served. But today, his poker face showed nothing. You understand why we're here, Captain? He asked without raising his voice. Ariana, still in her sweat-stained flight suit, nodded. Yes, sir. Good. Then let's begin. What followed was 4 hours of surgical questioning, her decision-making process, systems knowledge, chain of command violations, and every second of her aerial engagement broken down in painful detail. They pulled data from the Raptor's black box, audio recordings, missile telemetry, down to the exact second she had armed her weapons. She answered everything. Calm. factual. But with each response, she felt the tightening of an invisible noose, not around her neck, but around her future. Agent Naomi Briggs of the FBI was the only person in the room not in uniform. She was composed, mid-40s, African-American, hair pulled back into a tight twist, wearing a black blazer over a white shirt with a discreet badge on her hip. Unlike the military panel, she didn't hide her interest. She listened intently, took notes, and occasionally made direct eye contact that seemed to say, "You've just stumbled into something bigger than you think." At the end of the session, Admiral Whitaker closed his folder and leaned back. "Captain Mitchell, what you did today was either one of the most reckless acts of insubordination I've seen in my career, or the most effective single-handed air defense operation since Korea." Ariana swallowed. "Sir, I did what I believed was necessary to protect American lives." "And you may have saved over 5,000 of them," he replied. "But don't mistake outcome for authorization. There are systems. Chains of command. You bypassed all of them. Because they were too slow to act, sir." That got a long look. Not angry. Not admiring either. Just assessing. Finally, Whitaker nodded toward Briggs. "Agent Briggs, you wanted a moment?" The FBI agent stood, collected her file, and gestured for Ariana to follow. They walked in silence down a gray hallway until they reached a secure room that smelled faintly of electronics and metal. "Captain," Briggs said as the door closed behind them, "you didn't just interrupt an attack. You exposed something we didn't even know was happening." She spread a handful of satellite images and comms intercepts across the table. "The aircraft you shot down had encrypted data on U.S. naval movements. Precise movements. Too precise." Ariana leaned forward. "You're saying someone inside leaked it?" "I'm saying someone knew exactly where the Liberty Dawn would be, and when. Your engagement may have disrupted the first phase of a larger operation." For a moment, the weight of what she'd done fully landed. She hadn't just saved a carrier. She'd exposed a mole. Or worse, a network. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Briggs replied, "you cooperate. Fully. Because the people who authorized this breach, they're not going to stay quiet while you become the symbol of everything they failed to stop." As the meeting ended, Ariana was escorted to temporary quarters, small, windowless, utilitarian. She sat on the edge of the bed, still in her flight suit, helmet on the floor, hands resting on her knees. The adrenaline was gone. The pride was gone. What remained was exhaustion. And the creeping sense that flying 4-on-1 had been the easy part. Ariana lay on the stiff government-issue mattress, staring at the institutional white ceiling of her temporary quarters, the faint buzz of overhead LEDs a constant reminder that this place wasn't built for rest. It was built for containment. They hadn't formally called it confinement yet, but the meaning was clear: she wasn't free to leave, not while questions still hung like smoke around her. Outside, a pair of armed military police stood at the end of the hallway, not hostile, not friendly, just present. Like she might take another jet if no one was watching. The next morning, the questions resumed, this time, not from brass or agents, but from within. The media had found out. Somehow. That evening, a young Navy lieutenant burst into the room with a breathless urgency. "Ma'am," he stammered, "CNN's broadcasting footage. They're saying a female pilot stole an F-22 to stop an attack on a U.S. carrier. They're calling it the most dramatic act of military heroism since Desert Storm." Ariana blinked. "Footage?" "From the carrier's radar logs. Gun camera overlay. Satellite tracks. Somebody leaked it." And just like that, the narrative wasn't hers anymore. Within hours, her story was everywhere. News banners screamed "Pilot defies orders, saves thousands," and "Hero or criminal." Cable networks filled their panels with generals, pundits, former pilots, activists, and opportunists. Everyone had an opinion. She was either a savior or a symbol of military disobedience. The truth, like always, got lost somewhere in between. What few knew, and fewer understood, was that Ariana didn't do it for headlines. She had flown into that sky alone not to make a point, but because no one else had. By day 3, she was finally granted access to a secure line. It rang only once before the voice answered, "Ariana?" It was her sister, Dr. Jacqueline Mitchell, trauma surgeon, war widow, and Ariana's only remaining family. Her voice cracked with relief and anger. "What the hell were you thinking?" Ariana smiled despite herself. "You know exactly what I was thinking." Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "You lived." Ariana closed her eyes. Barely. Later that night, Lieutenant Morgan Reyes arrived unannounced, escorted by base security. Her face was pale, jaw tight, holding a manila folder bulging with printouts. "I thought you should see this." She spread dozens of pages on the room's narrow metal desk, screenshots from TV coverage, digital news articles, social media clips, even international reactions. "You're trending in 6 languages," Morgan said. "Some call you a traitor. Some call you Joan of Arc with a sidewinder." Ariana sat back, overwhelmed. "I didn't want this," she muttered. "I just wanted to fly." Morgan's voice softened. "Maybe that's why it matters." Then she pulled out a final sheet, a printed email. This came through official channels. From the family of Captain Elijah Ramirez. He was aboard the Liberty Dawn. Ariana took the page and read slowly. "Because of what you did, he came home to meet his newborn daughter. We don't care what they call you. You saved him. You saved us." Her throat tightened. For the first time since landing, Ariana felt her hands shake. The military could court-martial her. Congress could dissect her. The press could distort her. But none of them could take that truth away. One decision. One stolen flight. Thousands of lives spared. And behind every one of them, a story that would never make the news, but meant everything. Maybe she hadn't flown that day to be a hero. But someone out there still had a father. A daughter. A tomorrow. And that, she realized, was worth every consequence still to come. But consequences weren't content to wait. By the time the sun rose the next morning over Stonehaven Naval Field, Ariana Mitchell was already being prepped for transport. Not to a press conference. Not to a medal ceremony. But back to Falcon Ridge Air Command, under armed escort. The orders came directly from General Harold Prescott, the man who had denied her fighter training 3 years earlier and now held her fate in his clenched fists. He hadn't called. He hadn't requested a briefing. He'd issued a transfer order under Military Regulation 39A, citing flight violation, asset theft, and unauthorized engagement with hostile forces. The formal paperwork hadn't even acknowledged the success of her mission. The moment she stepped off the transport helicopter at Falcon Ridge, the tone shifted. The same airfield where she'd stolen the Raptor now felt colder, grayer, like it had been scrubbed of memory. Prescott waited for her on the tarmac, flanked by a security detail that looked more ceremonial than practical. He was a tall man in his early 60s, white hair cropped short, wearing the full dress uniform of a 4-star general. His posture was ramrod straight, his expression unreadable. But the tension in his jaw gave him away. This wasn't about regulations. It was personal. "Captain Mitchell," he began, without offering a salute. "You've caused quite a storm." Ariana stood at attention, her jaw locked. "I did what I had to do, sir." Prescott's eyes narrowed. "That's not how this institution works." You don't get to rewrite the rules because you believe you're right. You follow orders. Or you're removed. He turned and walked briskly toward the command building. Let's see what you've bought yourself. Inside, the room prepared for her Article 32 hearing looked more like a tribunal than a military office. 3 officers sat behind a raised bench, neutral, by appearance only. Prescott took his seat off to the side, overseeing but not officially presiding. Ariana was seated across from a military prosecutor who read the charges with a precision that felt almost surgical: theft of government property, violation of flight safety regulations, disobedience of a direct order, unauthorized combat engagement. Her defense attorney, a sharp-faced Air Force major she'd only met that morning, leaned over. Best case scenario? Dishonorable discharge. Worst case? Federal time. Ariana looked forward. I can live with that. But can they live with 5,000 body bags? He paused, then slowly sat back. No response required. Then, mid-session, a sealed envelope was passed to Prescott by a staffer. He opened it. His face changed, just slightly, but enough that even Ariana noticed. We'll adjourn for 30 minutes, he announced. Something had shifted. Minutes later, Agent Naomi Briggs entered the conference room through a side door. Her presence was like a spark tossed into dry leaves. She walked directly to Ariana, leaned in, and whispered, "The intel recovered from the aircraft you downed? It proves there's been a leak. A serious one. You're not on trial anymore, Captain. You're the key witness in a federal investigation." Briggs then turned toward Prescott, addressing him flatly. "General, the DOJ and JAG office have requested the immediate suspension of proceedings against Captain Mitchell, pending national security cooperation." Prescott's eyes flared. For the first time in his career, someone had pulled rank on him. He couldn't stop it. Not without implicating himself in obstruction. "So noted," he said through gritted teeth. As Ariana was escorted from the room, not in handcuffs, but under federal protection, she caught Prescott's stare, still burning, still trying to crush her under the weight of everything he thought she wasn't supposed to be. But this time, she didn't flinch. She held his gaze. Then turned away. Because she didn't need to win his war anymore. She was fighting a much bigger one now. And this time, they'd have to listen. The federal investigation into the leak exposed by Ariana's unauthorized engagement was sprawling like a wildfire through the corridors of military intelligence. At the heart of the storm was Dr. Victor Langston, a defense contractor whose reach extended far beyond the classified labs and secure server rooms where he operated. Langston was a man whose face could have been on a Fortune 500 cover, mid-40s, clean-shaven, piercing gray eyes, always impeccably dressed in tailored suits that contrasted with the dirt and danger of war zones his contracts indirectly fueled. To most, he was a brilliant systems integrator. To Ariana and the FBI, he was a key figure in a conspiracy that threatened national security. Ariana found herself in a secure briefing room at Liberty Defense Headquarters, a fortress of steel and glass just outside Washington, D.C. Agent Naomi Briggs was already there, waiting. The atmosphere was tense but professional. The walls were lined with monitors displaying satellite feeds, communications intercepts, and maps dotted with red alerts. The room smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air, a sterile scent that had become strangely comforting. Briggs slid a tablet across the table. "These are the decrypted communications intercepted between Langston and unknown foreign operatives," she explained. "They contain detailed information about naval movements, aircraft capabilities, and even specific personnel like you, Captain Mitchell. You weren't just a target, you were a wild card." Ariana's eyes narrowed as she scrolled through the messages. Questions Langston asked about Raptor training procedures, flight readiness, even psychological profiles. He was mapping the vulnerabilities inside the Air Force, Ariana said quietly. Exactly, Briggs said. He wasn't just leaking data, he was actively recruiting or neutralizing assets within the military. You challenged that plan. Ariana felt a strange mixture of pride and dread. Being labeled a wild card was a double-edged sword. Her defiance was valuable, but also dangerous. Briggs continued, the FBI and military counterintelligence are ramping up operations. You'll be working closely with us to identify others who might be compromised. Your insights will be crucial. For the first time in weeks, Ariana felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her fight for recognition anymore. It was about protecting the people she'd sworn to serve, no matter the cost. As the briefing concluded, Briggs stood and offered a small, encouraging smile. Welcome to the real war, Captain. Ariana left the room and gazed out at the gray skyline of the capital. The battles she'd flown before were physical and brutal, fought in the sky with speed and fire. This battle was slower, more invisible, but just as deadly. She thought about the pilots she'd trained with, the friends she'd lost, and the future she still hoped to fight for. The lines in the sky were no longer just enemy aircraft. They were the invisible boundaries of trust, loyalty, and truth. And Ariana Mitchell was ready to redraw them. But shaking the foundations of a decades-old institution was never going to be easy. Despite the powerful allies she had gained within the FBI and parts of the military, the resistance was fierce. Behind closed doors at Falcon Ridge and Washington's Pentagon corridors, whispers grew louder. General Harold Prescott's influence was far from over. His circle wielded deep connections, pulling strings to maintain the status quo. He saw Ariana not as a hero, but a threat to the discipline that kept the military's iron grip intact. To them, she was a symbol of dangerous insubordination, a reminder that one individual could disrupt the carefully balanced chain of command. Weeks turned into months as Ariana found herself caught in a whirlwind of hearings, classified briefings, and political maneuverings. Each day brought a new challenge, media scrutiny, internal investigations, and the relentless pressure to recant or conform. But she stood firm, refusing to let the system's inertia crush her spirit. When Congress convened special oversight sessions on military policies, Ariana was called upon to testify. Facing a room filled with senators and military officials, she recounted her story, not just of the stolen F-22 and the 4 hostile jets, but of the years spent being overlooked, denied, and dismissed because of entrenched biases. Her words resonated far beyond the hearing room. Advocacy groups seized the moment, pushing for reforms that addressed gender discrimination and systemic barriers in military advancement. Stories of other pilots, minorities, women, and those marginalized by the institution surfaced, weaving a complex tapestry of injustice and perseverance. Behind the scenes, a task force was formed, tasked with reviewing and revising the Air Force's personnel policies, training selections, and promotion criteria. Ariana was offered a place on the task force, an opportunity both empowering and daunting. Her fight was no longer solitary, it was a movement. Yet, the price was clear. She faced uncertainty about her military career, strained relationships with former colleagues, and the constant weight of public expectation. But every time she looked up at the sky, at the jets cutting clean lines across the horizon, she remembered why she had risked everything, to ensure that future pilots, regardless of gender or background, could chase their dreams without the invisible chains she had broken. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Ariana stood alone on the balcony of her quarters overlooking the vast expanse of the Nevada desert. The sun dipped below the jagged mountains, painting the sky with hues of amber and violet. The stars began to emerge, scattered like distant beacons. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the vastness of both earth and sky, Ariana felt a surge of hope. The battle was far from over, but the course was set. The chains were beginning to unbind. And now, after months of turmoil, Captain Ariana Mitchell finally stood at the precipice of a new beginning. The Air Force had come to a crossroads. Her fight, once seen as reckless defiance, had ignited a fire that could no longer be ignored. New policies were drafted, old biases confronted, and through it all, Ariana remained both the symbol and the architect of change. The task force she had helped lead was wrapping up its first comprehensive review, recommending groundbreaking reforms, objective performance-based promotions, transparent evaluation boards, and a renewed commitment to diversity and inclusion. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. In the middle of it all, Ariana received word she'd longed for but dared not expect: official clearance to resume fighter pilot training. The very training denied to her years ago was now within reach, an opportunity forged through sacrifice and perseverance. The moment she donned the flight suit again, it felt different, less like a fight for recognition, and more like a reclaiming of her destiny. Her first day back at Falcon Ridge was electric. The familiar hum of engines, the sharp scent of jet fuel, the precise choreography of a fighter squadron all wrapped her in a sense of belonging she had almost forgotten. Lieutenant Morgan Reyes greeted her with a smile tinged with admiration and relief. "Welcome back, Captain. Ready to show them what real flying looks like?" Ariana smiled in return, the weight on her shoulders suddenly feeling lighter. She was no longer just a pilot fighting for her place, she was an instructor, a leader, a beacon for those who followed. The training was intense, pushing Ariana's skills and resolve to new heights. Yet, every maneuver, every tactical exercise was a testament to how far she'd come. No longer flying in secret, no longer breaking rules alone, she was part of a team, a force ready to defend with skill and integrity. The old scars of prejudice hadn't vanished, but the cracks in the system had widened enough to let the light in. In a quiet moment between sorties, Ariana found herself at the hangar's edge, watching the Nevada sunset paint the F-22s in molten gold. Sergeant Rolfo Espinoza approached, his face weathered but proud. "Captain, she's ready. Just like the morning you took her without permission." Ariana laughed softly, the memory bittersweet. "Thanks, Sergeant. For everything." They stood together, two guardians of the skies, knowing the fight wasn't over, but confident in the wings they'd earned. The military hangar was alive with the low rumble of engines and the steady rhythm of footsteps on concrete as Ariana Mitchell took a deep breath, standing once again beside the gleaming F-22s lined up under the vast Nevada sky. This was no longer just about proving herself, it was about shaping the future for every pilot who would follow. The task force's recommendations had taken hold, transforming policies that once closed doors into open skies of opportunity. And now, as an authorized instructor pilot, Ariana was tasked with more than flying. She was responsible for guiding the next generation of aviators through the skies of a changing military. Her first class was a mix of fresh faces and seasoned flyers, united by one thing: a chance. Among them was Lieutenant Gustavo Pena, a young pilot with bright eyes and a quiet confidence that reminded Ariana of herself years ago, full of promise, yet wary of the obstacles ahead. Captain Mitchell, he greeted her with a respectful nod during pre-flight checks. "It's an honor to learn from you." She smiled, feeling the weight of that honor settle on her shoulders. "Lieutenant, let's make sure you're ready for anything." The training was rigorous, a blend of classroom instruction, simulator sessions, and real flights that tested every skill from precision maneuvers to split-second decision-making. Ariana emphasized not just technique, but integrity, courage, and the importance of questioning when orders conflict with what's right. She shared her story, not as a tale of rebellion, but as a lesson in responsibility and the power of standing firm. Outside the flight line, Colonel Grant Ellison, now base commander, watched with pride as Ariana led her squadron through a flawless exercise, the jets cutting synchronized arcs against a backdrop of endless blue. His own career had been shaped by tradition, but watching Ariana, he realized that tradition could evolve without losing its core, discipline could coexist with innovation, authority with fairness. As dusk fell, Ariana found herself alone once more on the balcony of her quarters, gazing at the silhouettes of F-22s against the fading light. The hum of engines and distant voices blended into a familiar symphony of readiness and resolve. Her journey, from denied pilot to symbol of change, had come full circle. The skies she fought for were no longer unreachable. They were hers to protect, and hers to share. Now, standing beneath the sprawling Nevada sky as the last light of day faded, Captain Ariana Mitchell felt the quiet hum of history beneath her boots, a hum composed of battles fought, barriers broken, and a future rewritten. The journey had been long, marked by defiance, sacrifice, and the unyielding belief that one person could change the course of an institution. But tonight, that journey was no longer hers alone, it was shared with every pilot who would soar in the jet stream she helped clear. As the stars emerged, dotting the heavens like countless watchful eyes, Ariana thought back to the early mornings when she'd wake in a cramped bunk, carrying the weight of rejection yet refusing to surrender her dream. She thought of the stolen flight, the fiery ballet with 4 enemy jets, the courtroom battles, and the cold offices where political machinations tried to clip her wings. But through it all, she had remained steadfast. Not for glory, not for fame, but for the simple, profound truth that the sky belonged to those brave enough to claim it. She knew the path ahead would still be fraught with challenges. Institutions are slow to change, and the fight for equality and fairness would never end. But as she looked out over the formation of F-22 Raptors now soaring above the desert, slicing clean lines across the twilight, she understood her true legacy, a path forged for those who would follow, where courage and skill mattered more than tradition and prejudice. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, a steady beacon in the storm. "Mija, you were always meant to fly." And finally, she believed it, not just the dream, but the reality. Ariana turned from the balcony, ready to embrace the dawn of a new era. Her unauthorized mission had started a revolution in the skies, and as the night surrendered to the first blush of morning, she was more than a pilot. She was a pioneer. The flight into tomorrow had just begun. Friends, our story has come to an end. Thank you so much for watching from beginning to end. We hope this story has inspired you and given you valuable lessons to carry forward. Before we close this video, if you enjoyed this kind of story, please don't forget to hit the like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, and share this story with your friends. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on more amazing and inspiring stories coming your way. Thank you for your support, and until next time, take care and stay inspired.